Good morning, everybody. It's Dr. Petteruti at Intellectual Medicine here with Shannon in the booth on a beautiful Saturday morning. Great day to be alive. The air is crisp. I hope you're breathing it in and enjoying it. Well, today we're going to talk about several topics. If you are thinking of having surgery for shoulder pain, you want to stay tuned. We're going to be talking about a new study that sheds some light on the risk-benefit of that approach. Can cinnamon help you lose weight? New information may be pointing in that direction. A popular drug used for gout has been correlated with possible increased death from heart disease. This is worth knowing about. And raw milk, is it good or is it bad? It's been in the news lately, so we're going to highlight that a little bit, as well as take a couple of phone calls if you guys are interested. And as usual, we'll scan through a couple of the headlines talking about things that affect your health, your well-being, your quality of life. At Intellectual Medicine, it is our mission to help you live a youthful 120 years. In order to do that, you need a platform to operate off of. And that platform includes more than just medicine. It's an entirely integrated lifestyle, as well as a culture in which that lifestyle is built. The idea of longevity being a commodity that can be dispensed from a pill is purely false. But we know that we can change the way that people age. The science is moving very, very quickly here. And I get this question a lot, why doesn't my insurance pay for anti-aging medicine? They'll never pay for real prevention, folks. Hospitals are not a bastion of preventative medicine. The principle of self-interest is at play in most business endeavors. And it goes something like this: not through malicious intent, but merely through a desire for self-preservation, most bureaucratic entities, including hospitals, are going to orient their objective toward that which enhances their revenue. Now, if you're a hospital, how do you get paid? Where's your money come from? It comes from sick people lying in beds. So you tell me, what's the incentive for major hospitals to get into profound prevention to the point where people aren't getting sick as much and their needs diminish? It's self-defeating in some ways. I've been following very closely, well, somewhat closely, this issue in Pawtucket. Shannon, the Pawtucket Memorial Hospital is slated to be closed.
They talked about it. I was like, no, that'll never happen.
Now, here's the thing. I've got to reflect on this, Shannon, because these hospitals didn't pop up out of nothing. And they were not created to make the bureaucrats and the administrators rich. Kent County Memorial Hospital was started many, many years ago, and they went through a fundraising drive, a not-for-profit hospital. I know this because my grandfather contributed money to them. He's a barber in East Greenwich, and he wrote him a check. It's way back before they were built. These people, like my grandfather, like many of you or your forefathers, contributed to building these institutions because at the time there was a needed service. They needed to have access to health care close to their home. So they raised the money, they built the hospital, and the mission was to serve the community. Now, bear in mind the mission, to serve the community, to enhance its health. Over the years, the hospital grew and grew, and now it became a profit center for high-powered surgeons and physicians, for highly paid administrators and bureaucrats. It became a bastion of employment. And all of a sudden, the focus starts to pivot. It's no longer asking the question, how can we best serve the community? Even if best serving it means that we deconstruct our current model and implement something new. Folks, the era of hospitals being the center of healthcare is ending. They will always be critical. They will always be needed. But they're narrowing in their spectrum of care. When I started medicine, well, for instance, Shen, when folks had babies years ago, they were in the hospital for a week. Now, how long are they in there? It's like drive-by. They drop the kid, bang, gone. The point is that many conditions that once required hospitalization are now being treated at home. And taking it back a step, at Intellectual Medicine, we believe in an aggressive form of prevention. The most health-preserving thing that you can do is maintain your youth. 20-year-olds get sick less often than 60-year-olds. So why don't we drive toward that goal? So here you've got, Kent Hospital growing up into a big corporate entity. And I remember when they cut out pediatrics. They stopped taking care of children. How could a community hospital do that? Well, it wasn't profitable, you see. They weren't making enough money. So they bungle their way into that mismanaged dead end. Then I remember, Shannon, this was the era of consolidation, right? We're all going to save money because we're going to glom all these things together. And the battle cry was always, this is for the good of the patient. We're going to make things bigger. It's going to be streamlined. And their fantasy of these doctors communicating with one another and saving money through scale of efficiency was smokescreen for the real agenda of maximizing their own profit. And now it ends with the destruction of Pawtucket Memorial. The mission, I'm not talking about the building. And I think it is true. It's true that we don't need as many hospital beds as we once did. Going back to when Kent Hospital was built, there was no Route 95. Getting up to Providence when you were sick was a big deal. And time is of the essence. Well, guess what, folks? Now we can move more easily. You could argue that we could be served with fewer hospitals with a high degree of specialization because repetitive volume does help reduce complications in many procedures. But back to Pawtucket. So they closed the whole thing. Well, guess what? There are still sick people in that community. There's still people that need to be seen. The shift has been to outpatient-based medicine. Close the hospital beds if you must, but leave the emergency room open. This is where people contact the healthcare system. 7% of people that are seen in hospital emergency rooms end up getting admitted. That means 93% of them go home. We need resources for people to be seen. I was talking to a patient just this week, Shem, and he got admitted to Miriam Hospital, backlogged in that ER, people in the hallways, people outside the doors, because there's no other place to go. So it's not serving the community. Ask that question. And the objective here is not to preserve any given institution or its jobs. It's to serve the people. Now, intellectual medicine is part of this new wave of revolution, which is moving the center of healthcare away from the hospital power base and more towards you, towards the community, more towards that primary prevention. I told you that everybody has an incentive to do that which is in their own self-interest. Well, guess what? We're the same way. And it is in our self-interest to keep you alive and young, because when you get sick, that doesn't help us. Not only that, it's not consistent with our philosophy. So when we come back, we're going to be taking a break, right, Tessa? We have to do a commercial thing. She's giving me that wrap-up sign. Yeah, you do that very well, Tessa. You're getting very skilled back there. You look very directorial. You're looking like a number one producer, but I'm going to blow it for you if I don't get off the line here. So when we come back, though, we're going to be talking about raw milk, about gout medicines that can kill you. We're going to be talking about a supplement for osteoarthritis that can cause harm, and whether or not you should consider surgery for that shoulder pain. Stay with us. We're going to tell you how to stay young. It's Dr. Petteruti at Intellectual Medicine. You don't get young by having surgery.
No,
Every time you get cut, you leave behind scar tissue. It's an inevitable consequence. It gets underreported, underrated. Not only that, but anesthesia. And what happens? Aspiration pneumonia. We just don't know what it's doing to brains, right?
No, where's the study on that?
What do you want to talk about when we come back? Raw milk? Maybe we'll talk about raw milk and cinnamon.
Cinnamon, what do you have to eat? Like 4 tablespoons of sugar a day? Like, that's where it doesn't make sense. It's like turmeric.
Yeah.
You gotta take, like, the amount that you need is like, it's not like you drink a cup of tea, which would be gross anyway. Like, it's...
Well, what happens is the headline gets grabbed, and the next thing you know...
People sprinkling cinnamon on top of their 800-calorie latte and think, like, I'm gonna lose weight.
That's
Well,
right.
it sounds good today, though.
Whatever happened to that little sprinkly thing?
What's sprinkly?
Oh, Sensa. Wasn't that it?
Oh, Sensa.
You sprinkle it on your food and your fat melts away.
Yeah, they made a lot of money.
We know that the Democrats colluded with Russia at least as much. From all the evidence available to us, the Democrats committed far graver misdeeds in colluding with Russia because we now know that Hillary Clinton and the DNC paid a foreigner connected with Russia for alleged dirt on Donald Trump to skew an American election.
The Michael Knowles Show at Apple Podcasts and Google Play.
What we're really finding out is that politics is dirty pool.
Seriously.
Snowman
I can't
switched
believe
on
anyone.
tonight.
Yeah, I
This is so
may
wild.
or may not have accidentally on purpose.
Hey, Tessa, any way to turn the overhead volume down from your side?
Tens of millions of songs, one for every moment. Amazon Music Unlimited. Sign up today and receive 3 months for
better?
99 cents at amazon.com/music.
Yeah, we have it turned down as far as we can in here, but I didn't know if there was a master switch out there.
I can't taste it. Or hasn't killed me yet. My test says all contaminations identified are within the EPA's acceptable allowable limits.
Is this a show that Matt Lauer used to be on?
It is.
Virtually all bad
Today?
things in your water
That was
are
his
tasteless,
place, huh?
odorless, and colorless. Your test tells you what's in your water, but not for how long it's been there before you knew. Your water test is a snapshot in time. It's not a forever security. Ongoing security is exactly the very reason you invest in a professional.
Wonder what he'll do next for his.
Today you have some
What do
I
you
couldn't hear you.
Back in about a minute.
is deep.
Back in about a minute.
You have in today's
What do you? I mean, what do you do?
to ensure that you have the best water quality possible.
You look at a guy like Michael Vick, the quarterback for the Atlanta Falcons, who was involved with the dog fighting, and he ended up being convicted and went to prison for a couple of years. Came out and played again in the NFL.
Really?
Well, yeah, he went through like a whole rehabilitative process, re-education. I mean, when the puck feels you've paid a consequence and you've come to grips with your flaw, there's a more of an aptitude to forgive. When they feel like you're just,
Right.
you go to 30 days at like La Conta
Right.
Inn.
Get your tickets now at the Greenwich box office
Okay.
on Main Street in East Greenwich or online at greenwichodium.com.
We are back, and one of the things Hippocrates said is, "Let food be thy medicine, and medicine be thy food." We kind of neglect that. Now, Shan, you recently completed your nurse practitioner degree, and you've been out practicing. How much of the time in your studies was devoted to nutrition?
Oh gosh, I couldn't even tell you. So not a lot.
Not a lot.
I don't know.
And I spent 4 years in medical school, 3 years in my residency, and I don't know if we ever spoke about food, nutrition, or its impact on our health. So it is no wonder that as an institution or as a community, Orthodox medicine neglects nutrition. It's just too complicated, it's hard to study, and therefore we tend to dismiss it. Many of our patients who are seeking our care to help support them in their fight against cancer report that when they ask their oncologist about nutrition, they don't get tangible answers, or they get an answer that it really doesn't matter, go ahead and eat whatever you want. Now, I understand that. Oncologists are busy. There's only so much you can be an expert in any one given moment in time. If a patient asked me what best chemotherapy agent to use, I'd have no answer. Therefore, we've got to be able to direct our own health care, folks. You have to be able to seek it out because it's there to be found. But you've got to be able to look for it. And, in intellectual medicine, we're one of those outlets. But it brings me up to this topic of raw milk that I found utterly fascinating on a few levels. The first, what the hell's raw milk? Because I'm like, who's drinking raw milk? Isn't this like Opie from Andy Griffith, milking the cow and drinking the milk? Seems like a pretty healthy and good thing to do. But it was interesting because there's a recent warning for a particular brand of raw milk that had an increased risk of infection. The increased risk of infection set out warning alarms, and it's been reported throughout the states to be on the lookout, particularly Rhode Island, Connecticut, Massachusetts, for raw milk from the particular distributor, or particular manufacturer. But it made me dive into raw milk in more detail, and I was interested to find out that Shannon and her former business at Belani Maternity had contact with many women who were very progressive thinkers and did a lot of research into that which would help their children. And you had some women there that were using raw milk, Shannon, didn't you?
We did. For allergies, for ADHD, for a whole slew of different reasons.
So their motive was better health for their children. Mm-hmm. And in fact, folks, there is research out of Europe showing that children who drink raw milk had a lower incidence of asthma. And those who advocate for it in the United States point out their belief that it's going to improve immune function, that you get better nutritional quality. Now, when milk gets pasteurized, it is superheated and then cooled rapidly. That process of pasteurization helps the milk to have a longer shelf life and enables it to be shipped throughout interstate commerce more easily. They have something called ultra pasteurization, Shannon, I hadn't heard of until I did the research, where they superheat it and the milk can last for 9 months on the shelf.
That just seems gross. Who wants 9-month-old milk?
I know. Who said, woohoo, I could drink 6-month-old milk? Who wants that? What good is it, right?
I was going to say, yeah, what could possibly be left in it that's good for you?
So that's pasteurization to the extreme. And the debate has been, does pasteurization compromise the nutritional quality of the milk? And it appears that it may. It alters the protein and nutritional content of it to a degree. So many people have taken it upon themselves to seek out raw milk. Now, did you get much feedback, Shannon, from those mothers? It must have been hard for them to really know if it helped their children. What was their impression?
Yeah, I have no idea. I don't know if it actually helped or didn't help, but it would just be a topic of, how we were going to get it that week, because it's illegal in Rhode Island. You gotta smuggle it in.
So that raises a whole nother topic, doesn't it, folks? Illegal to have raw milk in Rhode Island. Now, if you're Massachusetts and Connecticut, you're good to go. It's legal in those states. So there's an active bootlegging business, I should say activity in Rhode Island, where these criminal mothers are smuggling in raw milk across the state border against government law. Now, pause for a moment. Just pause. At Intellectual Medicine, we advocate for the freedom of choice in as many arenas as possible. We rail against orthodox restriction. Consolidation of power is usually done under the premise of protecting the public, when the real agenda is to increase the power of the power holders. Now, we at Intellectual Medicine believe in empowering you, and you can get that power because knowledge is power, folks, and you can get it through the internet. Now, many doctors hate when patients Google and research. We love it because it makes them more active participants in the whole process. So in fact, you can get sick from drinking raw milk. You can get sick from eating chicken. You can get sick from eating E. coli spewed salad. Food has an inherent risk. Why is raw milk segregated in such a manner? Is it possible that it goes against the larger corporate farms that want to be able to dominate the market and ship their milk interstate? Can you imagine, picture this scenario, mom coming back from Massachusetts after a night of gambling, she's got marijuana in the trunk, maybe she's got some vodka, coming home, and she's got a bottle of raw milk. And the police pull over and they say, lady, get out of the car, slowly, hands against the car. I saw that raw milk. Yep, back away slowly and hand that raw milk to me. It's absurd. In Rhode Island, you can go to the bar and drink all the shots of vodka you want, but you can't have a sip of raw milk. So I don't know where that law came from or why it's there.
I don't know, but I mean, this is like 12 years ago, and it's still like it's coming up, coming around now again.
It's a way of criminalizing freedom of choice. I think it's reasonable to have warnings, if you will. But, last year there were 43 million food-related illnesses, 43 million. 42 of them were from raw milk, actual pittance. So I don't know that I would ever drink raw milk. Let me offer you another point on that. I don't think adults should be drinking milk in the first place. I mean, if you have been weaned, why in the world would you drink milk? It can be an important ingredient in baking and cooking, but humans are the only mammals on the planet that drink milk after we've been weaned. Why do we do that? Well, we do it because historically we were taught to do it. Once upon a time, we were too poor to kill the cow. So you drank the milk. It was cheap protein. And this habit has been propagated in an ongoing manner that milk is somehow nutritious and good for you. It's nonsense. The protein can be hard to break down. The sugar can be hard to break down. It's simply not a good thing to drink, folks, when you're an adult. Very little value. Having said that, if you want to have your raw milk, I'm not going to object. We're all about freedom here. Other nutrition in the news, cinnamon. They did a study and they found in the journal Metabolism that cinnamon might increase lipid metabolism. Now here is a warning story. The fact that cinnamon in a laboratory dish has been shown to enhance fat metabolism could be extrapolated to evidence supporting cinnamon as a means of helping you lose weight. While there may be truth to cinnamon being a benefit to fat metabolism, making the leap to weight loss, it's like saying a bottle rocket can make it to the moon. I mean, these two things are quantum steps apart. So be on the lookout for cinnamon-based supplements.
I was excited, though. I'm going to go get my gingerbread latte and sprinkle some cinnamon on my whipped cream. And then there you go. It's telling me that I can lose weight, right?
That's it. It's just more cinnamon. In fact, give me 3 more lattes. I need more cinnamon. This is the theater of the absurd. And you know what? I do not blame our patients, Shan, that come to us and have tried ridiculous things to lose weight, because we were talking a moment ago about the self-interest of the medical institution. Look, folks, they make more money when you are chronically ill, morbidly obese, on multiple drugs, but not quite dead. Years ago, I went to some of the hospitals trying to get them to help us spread our information about the medical weight loss that we have had enormous success with. 90% success rate. Nobody was interested. I mean, it doesn't help generate a profit for them if you never go to the hospital. Remember, what was that, Sensa? The Sensa, folks. It's a little thing you sprinkled on your food and your fat melted away. In reality, obesity is a chronic metabolic neurotransmitter discriminated medical disorder. It's the hardest thing to treat in all of medicine. And therefore, there's been willful ignorance. Doctors have chosen not to engage because it's just beyond the scope of orthodox medicine. Well, that's why we exist, because we'll talk after we come back from the break about its role in cancer. And we need to talk about the medication for gout and about shoulder surgery, Shannon, because part of our mission is to protect people from the harm of conventional medicine. And one of those harms includes, I have time to get this in, the drug Uloric, folks. Uloric is being used to help lower uric acid in people with gout. Now, gout is a condition of joint inflammation. It's caused when uric acid falls out of its solution in the blood and creates crystals in the joints, most commonly in the feet and toes, because it's colder down there. And you remember from chemistry class how crystals come out of a solution more rapidly when the solution is cooled? If you've ever made rock candy, you know what I'm talking about. Well, those crystals irritate the heck out of your joints and can destroy them. And many people have been on allopurinol. A new drug came to market a few years ago, around 2009, called Uloric, and now we're finding out that it may increase your risk of death. A little minor side effect that they didn't note about early on. The moral is be slow to adapt new drugs. We used to have a saying, don't be the first guy in a foxhole, the last one out of it. Sometimes the older stuff is more time-tested. Now, when we come back, we're going to be talking about how to keep your shoulder healthy, and should you or should you not consider surgery for that aching shoulder. And up next, from the Revolution Soft Wash News Center, is Doug Lizette with the news. Close.
Sorry, I wasn't sure if you were going to a break or to the news or whatever.
If you hadn't pointed to that sign, I would have blown it.
Well, there we go. Keep it as happening.
Never assume that I have any knowledge.
I had a bit of an issue with the recording back here, but it's all set now. It might be a little sketchy when you listen to it, but it should be okay now.
The final week.
Good, thanks.
Election day.
Sorry about that.
Cinnamon, your raw milk. Raw milk.
$7 million October 1st to November 22nd, but his Democratic challenger raised almost $10 million during that same period. Officials say the Ohio State Agriculture Department will not find the operators of that oil mine that broke apart over the summer, killing one.
Wow, Mario Hilaro, he's been on Channel 10 forever, huh?
Mm-hmm.
He looks good, though. He's aged well.
A 4-passenger car broke apart.
Mm-hmm.
We should get him to come to intellectual medicine so we could take credit for him being youthful.
WWPRO Sports. The Patriots are on the way to Buffalo to take on the Bills. The kickoff is at 1 p.m. and you can hear the game here on News Talk 630 and 997 FM.
That is gonna be cold training.
From the Seascape,
Yes, it is. You got to better bundle up.
AccuWeather forecast calling for
You
sunshine today.
put the sweater on, Mandy, too.
Clouds in the afternoon. 47, mostly cloudy tonight.
Say again?
1
I'm too anxious to sit down.
clouds, high of 49 degrees.
Thing. Yeah, she
Yeah.
has a coat. She had her shoved that trazodone.
Oh, yeah, the liquid, huh? Oh, that
She
went
was shout
okay?
out to him. She doesn't like it, but I don't think she'd like anything you put in her mouth. But she took it.
Right now, still looking good. 146.6 and 195 coming in just fine. Headed eastbound on 195, you were good out to Swansea, and 95 north and south. Real quiet between Pawtucket and Cranston in both directions. Average to you. With you right now, traffic.
Yeah, I don't know what I got planned for this afternoon. Maybe play a little basketball in the driveway. Has
Use them for stocking stuffers, or add them to a holiday card or present for just the right touch. The Rhode Island Lottery wants you to have a wonderful holiday, so simplify the season with Rhode Island Lottery Holiday Instant Tickets, the perfect gift for everyone 18 and older on your list. Please play responsibly. Wow.
Doug says one of the knobs in front of you should turn the studio volume down, but he's not sure which one.
Extra 10 to 30
Yep,
Carter savings pack.
I've identified that knob, and we have it down as low as she'll go.
15% off beauty purchases.
Is
Oh, and it's still too loud.
Plus, great
Yeah.
savings.
Is it okay the way it is?
Yeah, it's just like if you talk.
So
That's
the extra 30% savings.
Oh, when you're, yeah.
Macy's Friends and Family Sale. Savings off regular and sale prices. Exclusions apply.
Hi, Rick Edelman here. You have savings and investments and you're working hard to save for retirement. Here's good news. Investing doesn't have to be right or wrong, a do it or not predicament, and most importantly, you don't have to go it alone. At Edelman Financial, we can help. What are your goals? Are you saving for retirement, second home, college for a
At
child?
least it's not like
grandchild?
screaming
You need to
at
set
you, but
goals
it is.
because
Yeah, it's
you know,
okay.
some of the commercials just get like really loud.
Yeah, the levels on them are all different. I don't know what it is. Yeah. Okay, if he tells me which one it actually is, I'll let you know.
Okay, thanks, Tessa. So good news, folks. It looks like in fact, the Intellectual Medicine of East Bay, Rhode Island, will be opening January 8th. We will be announcing the physician who will be owning and operating that in the near future. Important thing is that we are able to now establish that this form of medicine is being adopted by other physicians and is being made more broadly available to the public. Live your life at your best weight. Live your life with all of your hormones. Oh, Tessa's talking to me. Would you say, Tessa? You're back in a minute, but we're here already, so you know. The rest of the people, I'll be back in a minute. Best weight, hormones replaced, detoxified, antioxidants neutralized. I should say free radicals neutralized. These are the foundation pieces of maintaining youth and enhancing longevity. You put all those together, you start to build the potential for that 120-year lifespan. And people don't want to get there feeling old, but you won't. You don't get to live long unless you're healthy. There aren't too many 95-year-olds that were sickly on their journey of life. The questions to be asking isn't, why can we live to 120? It's why don't we? If, in fact, we've got the genetic potential to live to 120, then every increment of age expansion below that is a compromise of what we can do. Hey gang, we are back. Beautiful cold day out there. Now Shannon, you're going to be up at Mandy, the pit bull's dog lesson later today, right?
That's right. Group training.
Our neurotic, anxiety-induced pit bull that doesn't have much fur because she was sick as a pup.
That's right. That's right. That won't take any pills. I got to give a shout out to Ryan over at Bayview Pharmacy who compounded me her liquid anxiety meds and a beef flavor.
That's fabulous.
And she took them this morning, so hopefully class will go, a little better for her.
Now, Shannon, before you decided to bring this pup home, did you read the fine print about all these issues?
Not so much about her.
Mandy, the neurotic pit bull. Yes, indeed. Our home has been in made a warmer and more joyful place. Anyhow, the interesting about compounding pharmacies, a huge percentage, it's a growing percentage, I should say. Some have estimated about 20% of all pharmacologic prescriptions are being dispensed by compounding pharmacists. Now, these are pharmacists that mix stuff up together exclusively for the use of their patients. And intellectual medicine and anti-aging would have difficulty functioning without them. They are capable of making hormonal mixtures, medical mixtures. In fact, just about all of the vitamins and supplements that we use at Intellectual Medicine, intravenous infusions, all come from compounding pharmacies. And it wasn't too long ago that some of those pharmacies were in jeopardy of being shut down. The federal government, through their overzealous regulatory activity, was looking to really put the kibosh on them. And thanks to the recent administration calling off the dogs, there's been a reprieve. And intellectual medicine and anti-aging therapies are able to live once again and fight for another day. Any advance in any field of medicine, science, or technology is first met with skepticism and opposition all the time. And often the leaders of those advances are the sacrificial wave, either literally or figuratively. They lose their career, reputation, or in some cases their life. Galileo spent his time under house arrest. He died in disgrace for having the audacity to propose that the sun was the center of the universe. 200 years later, the Catholic Church apologized to him. I'm sure he appreciated that. At Intellectual Medicine, we are on part of that cutting edge. And yes, there are elements in Orthodox medicine that aren't embracing of it. And I can understand skepticism. I would approach what we do with skepticism. In fact, I did. 10 years ago when I started to study this field, Shannon, I thought it was more promotion than substance. And I've come to appreciate through all the study that we've done and through the benefit we've seen given to our patients that there's real science behind the notion of living longer, of living younger. Well, how long? And how do you stay young? Well, the 4 core elements, right? Number 1, you must live at your best weight. I can't emphasize this enough. Obesity is the leading cause of chronic illness in America. It is the unrecognized epidemic. It's being ignored by departments of health across the nation. It's being ignored by Orthodox medicine. Unless they can cut you open and fillet you like a fish and make huge profit by virtue of giving a gastric bypass, an utterly barbaric surgery, that's the only path that they currently embrace by and large. Now, there are some exceptions to that, but that's the majority opinion. And if your doctor says to you, if you've ever been told by your doctor because you have issues with your weight that you need to diet and exercise, then your doctor just manifested a profound ignorance of the science, because diet and exercise fails everybody all the time who needs to lose significant weight. Look, you want to drop 5 pounds, have a ball. You need to lose a lot, that makes a difference. So why does all this matter? Well, because obesity is now the number 2 leading preventable cause of cancer, behind cigarette smoking, which means if you don't smoke, excess adiposity is your number 1 risk factor. Now, you may look in the mirror and say, you know what, I'm the same weight I was back in high school. It's not your weight that matters, folks. It's your percent body fat. That is a number that I believe should be analyzed in most patients. It's a number you should know. It's a more important number than your cholesterol or your blood pressure. And those are numbers that are promoted all the time, Shannon. Why? Why do we still promote these 1980, 1970 metrics of health? Because it's that old cliche, when you can't measure what's important, you give importance to what you can measure. So I got a blood pressure cuff in my office, Shan. The same blood pressure cuff that Galileo probably had. I don't know. This thing's been around forever. Look, there's nothing wrong with checking blood pressure. And there's nothing wrong with doing things to healthfully lower your blood pressure. But the overuse of drugs to attack blood pressure has harmed many people and gives false hope that somehow it can actually protect you from heart disease and stroke. You've got to look beyond that. We must look at the arteries themselves. The technology exists, and we use it every day to assess the health and youth of the arteries themselves, instead of looking at shadows on the wall. This gets me going, Shan, because it's so available. It's right there. but there's just no incentive to pursue it. Blood pressure, cholesterol. Here, take a drug. Your cholesterol's high. Take a drug. Take another drug. Well, there's a drug called Repatha, and the Repatha is an injectable medicine used to help lower cholesterol. We're still beating the cholesterol drum, right? We're going to cure heart disease by giving you drugs. Well, they did find it recently got FDA approved for preventing heart attacks and death from heart disease in people with coronary artery disease already. The dose is given every other week or once a month. It's an injectable drug, and it will lower your LDL cholesterol. Relatively new drug, and you heard my opinion before. You have to wait on these new drugs to see all their warts come out. But the cost, upwards of over $14,000 a year. Think about that for a moment. If you've had a heart attack and you were given $14,000, they just wrote you a check and said, "Here you go, Mrs. Smith. You can spend this money on anything you want that'll help lower your risk of a heart attack." Is a drug the first dollar you would spend? How about nutritional therapy? How about lowering percent body fat through intellectual medicine weight loss? How about changing your diet to reduce inflammation? These are attributes of health that are ignored. More powerful and potentially more powerful, and yet it's kind of swept under the rug. So we look at conventional medicine, orthodox medicine. We like drugs. If we've got a drug, it makes it easy. Right, Shan? Come on in. Got about 5 minutes to cure your problem. If I can't write you a script within 5 minutes, I'm up against the clock. I'm sorry. I'm out of ideas. But the other thing that happens, right? Surgery for pain. So you go to your doc, your shoulder's been clicking and snapping. It hurts you when you raise it up over your arm. You go to physical therapy. It doesn't get you better. The next step is to go to see a surgeon who's maybe going to do a decompression surgery for your shoulder where they go in arthroscopically, microsurgery, and they carve away part of the bone to make the opening for the joint larger. The theory being you'll move your shoulder better and it won't hurt. Problem. Study done looking at sham surgery versus a real thing. So they gave these folks, put them under anesthesia and gave them a puncture wound. They had informed consent. 6 months later, there was no difference between people who had the actual surgery versus those who had the sham surgery. In summary, you could say, based on the study, that surgery for arthritic shoulder pain does not work. We must find a better way. Now, how in the world can supplements, weight loss, and plasma injections help your shoulder get healthy? Well, we're going to be talking about that in the next section. Shoulder pain as well as other advances that help keep you young. But the take-home message is this. Before you get elective surgery for your shoulder, for your knee, for an arthritic pain condition, I would even say, Shannon, for your back. It's another area that people get kind of compelled to have surgery. You should look at every option short of an operation. And we're going to share those options with you when we get back. I'm Dr. Petteruti. This is Intellectual Medicine. We'll be right back.
I think the TV's on.
You wonder what now?
I think the TV's on. I can hear the sound from it. That'd be nice.
Yeah, but it's not the same as what's on the screen.
When we go out, it's supposed to play, the news sounder is supposed to play at 59:50, but last time it played like 20 seconds early while Tony was talking. So I might wrap you guys up just a little bit early so that doesn't happen, and they'll just get a little bit of extra slide before the news starts.
So if you start the music,
yeah.
When it's time for me to sign off, the Everyday People song?
Yeah, I'll do it for like a minute.
You'll have the music go for about a minute?
Well, I'll start it when you have a minute left, and then I'll give you the 30-second signal.
Okay, start it when I have 30 seconds left.
Start the music, okay.
Yeah, then I'll talk over it for 30 seconds, and I'll be able to wrap up by that.
All right, and I'll give you maybe like
okay.
10 countdown.
All right.
That works.
That way, you did that. Didn't you do the countdown last time?
I did the 10 seconds because I was afraid it was going to go into you, but yeah.
That worked too.
Like I said, last time it played early, so I will, Do you like 30-second warnings too, coming back from commercial breaks, or just a minute is okay?
Minute's good.
Oh.
Yeah. Oh, this guy? So that's a Massachusetts state senator whose husband was molesting other men.
Oh,
And
Coming back in 1 minute.
that's lovely.
yeah, it was, and so the issue's been, well, should he, the senator, somehow be culpable, resign his position? I mean, it's not him; it's his husband. I mean, I'm sure I'm sure he's as much upset by it as anybody.
Right.
And the idea that somehow like he's culpable, it'd be like if you went to, I don't know, Foxwoods and were gambling and drinking, and somehow it's like, you know,
Right,
my
right.
fault and I've got to
You
take a
shouldn't like lose your
consequence.
job for it. No,
I don't think that's cool at all.
no, I don't either.
Throughout the state, Rhode Island Medical Imaging provides world-class medical imaging closer to home. Along with our state-of-the-art equipment, our 60
Shocking.
radiologists are subspecialized with advanced training.
Anyone shocked about that?
Medical imaging is the first
Enrollment concerns in Obamacare.
No one's
It goes back
enrolling.
to Margaret Thatcher's famous quote: "Socialists end up running out of spending other people's money." And that's what's happening. You know, they're running out of spending other people's money.
Dr. Petteruti. Call in now at 438-WPRO or 1-800-321-WPRO.
Hey gang, I am back. We were just talking off air about the responsibility to take care of ourselves. And we talked before we left about shoulder surgery, the fact that studies have shown that arthroscopic surgery to relieve shoulder impingement doesn't work. Not been shown to improve outcomes versus placebo surgery. So what are you supposed to do, right? Have you ever heard somebody say, well, your joints... I saw a guy in the other day, Shan, and he's 50 years old, athletic guy, has a physical job, having pain everywhere. Everywhere his muscles meet his joints, the elbows, the shoulder, the hands, the knees, everything kind of hurts and it's cranking. Saw his doctors, no diagnosable form of arthritis was present. So he wanted our help, how to reverse this process. Well, there are things that are underlying that type of pain, that arthritic pain, that shoulder, that knee, that back. And it's not simply a matter of, oh, you're getting older. This is part of aging. It will progress and get worse. That's not true. There are things that can be done to reverse and improve the process. Remember, your body every day is trying to heal itself. It doesn't sit idly by and let itself corrode. We need to do things to help bolster its benefit in that direction. So what's the most important thing you can do for any joint pain? Number one thing you can do is build the power around that joint. Muscle power equals joint health. So if you have a knee, arthritic knee, you have to power it up, a shoulder, a back, across the board. But here's a problem. What type of people get a lot of arthritis? Well, they're older people. People like me. It's like at 58, I have knee arthritis. Probably elsewhere too, but I know for sure the knee bugs me on some level. Without adequate hormone support and without proper nutritional support, you cannot grow muscle, period, end of story. So when I see folks come in because they've had back pain and they're sent to rehab, there may be some merit there, but they're not going to get a full measure of recovery. It's like being a 9-year-old and trying to build muscle. You cannot. You just don't have the hormonal base. You need testosterone in the proper dose to grow muscle. And growing muscle diminishes pain around joints. Those things connect. How about nutrition? You can work out all you want. If you don't feed the muscle properly, it won't get stronger. So nutritional details have to be addressed. Muscle has to be enhanced. So you go to your doctor and say, my shoulder's hurting me. Well, would they ever say to you, you need hormones and strength training? Probably not, because it's a realm of care that's not common. The other things you can do, we were talking about percent body fat earlier. We have an equipment at our office, an Intellectual Medicine of East Bay, which is going to be opening January 8th, will be equipped with the same advanced testing that we have, and it can accurately gauge your percentage of body fat, not your weight, not your BMI. BMI is another one of those antiquated metrics, like blood pressure, that has some marginal value, but has been overlapped by better testing that you don't know about. Most of you don't. And that better testing is percent body fat. You should know that number. Now, we could test that at our office. Rather simple. It takes, about 1 minute. Painless. If your percent body fat as a woman is over 30, or your percent body fat as a man is over 20, you're in a yield zone. You're in an increased danger zone for everything from dementia to cancer to heart disease to arthritis to worsening asthma. Now, how do these things connect? Well, it turns out that fat cells produce cytokines, which are pro-inflammatory. They're irritants. They're irritants, and they make asthma worse, and they make the joint pain worse, and they make your risk of cancer increase, and they corrode your brain. So getting to your healthy percent body fat is an essential element. And yet it's the hardest thing to do in all of medicine. Drug therapy alone doesn't work. Supplements alone don't work. We've woven these together into an approach, intellectual medicine 120 approach for weight loss that solves the problem. And here's how it connects to your painful shoulder. If your shoulder hurts, do not get surgery until your hormones are replaced, your percent body fat is below 30 as a woman, 20 as a man, you've had sufficient antioxidant therapy to neutralize free radicals, and you have considered and potentially implemented PRFM injection, plasma-rich fibrin matrix. That's when we take your blood, spin out the red and white cells, and concentrate the clear part with the platelets in it. Those platelets have growth factors in them that help heal. I mean, that's what platelets do. You cut yourself, the platelets rush to the cut, and it gets healed. We take advantage of that principle and inject it into your joint. And if all those other things haven't already helped you, those injections can add to their benefit and perhaps turn it in your favor. Totally safe. It's your own stuff. It's not a drug. It's not a steroid. And it can be repeated whenever you need to. I've had 2 of these injections to my knee. Made a big difference. It's like oiling it up again. You put all those pieces together, wow, you got a real shot at changing your shoulder, your back, your knee pain, your fibromyalgia, your chronic headaches, your asthma. Shannon, I can't tell you how many folks come to us, and as a consequence of their weight reduction, their asthma literally goes away. They stop using their inhalers. Saw a gentleman the other day, he's in his early to mid-70s, and he has chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, COPD. That is thought to be, in fact, it's considered to be an irreversible destruction of lung tissue that makes you short of breath when you move and walk. The treatments for it don't work. They don't work well. Inhalers, marginal benefit. What helps? Well, we took this gentleman, Shan, we started him on a weight loss program, put him on hormone therapy, stimulated his growth hormone through supplements. He's lost 40 pounds of fat, not 1 pound of muscle. He is off 4 of his inhalers. He does not take any inhalers. His snoring has stopped. In the last year, he's had one of his best runs avoiding hospitalization. This is not isolated. This is common. It's hard work. It takes a commitment on the part of the patient. It takes a willingness to open up your mind to a broader range of treatment modalities. So if you're hearing my voice and suffering some of these entities, you need to do the research. Find out for yourself what can help. And those things that can help you stay healthy and stay young, they're not often falling into that realm of orthodox medicine. We need to think past that. The foundations of living 120 years. Number 1, live at your best weight. We've been talking about that. Number 2, make sure that you have detoxified yourself. Many of our patients, we recommend chelation intravenously to help reduce heavy metal toxicity that can corrode brain and increase cancer risk. Have your free radicals neutralized by proper antioxidant therapy, and make sure that you get your hormones replaced. You will either replace your hormones or you will live with the consequence of their loss. Hormone therapy alone is not enough to preserve youth, but it's essential. It's an essential component. You know, if you don't get hormone therapy, you will lose bone mass. You will lose muscle mass. You will shrink in height. Your genitals will shrink. Your brain will slow down. Your skin will become less elastic. These are not maybes. These are inevitable. This is a normal, I'm putting that in quotes, my quotes floating in the air, a normal consequence of aging. Your sex drive will evaporate. Why would you want to live that way? Why would you choose that path if there's an alternative approach? If the science exists to reverse all of those symptoms, and the growing evidence is putting into perspective a lot of the incorrectly, inaccurately, and exaggerated fear of cancer. I've had people say reflexively, I won't do hormones, give me cancer. Nonsense. Properly administered, these are extraordinarily safe interventions that have an enormous benefit to risk ratio. So on a level of acute symptom, solving pain, it's one of the number of reasons people go to the doctor, Shannon, is pain. And what do they walk out with, right? We're being told now, don't give them opioids. And I think that's appropriate. Narcotic therapy for chronic pain is a bad recipe. Then what do? If you go to your doctor for pain and the opioids are high risk for addiction and adverse consequences, they don't work that great. There's some people in whom opioid therapy makes their life tolerable and functional. And God bless them for achieving functional capacity, and their doctors and nurse practitioners for having the empathy and knowledge to support their appropriate use of narcotics. So in many of you, and some of you, that's a component, but it's not enough by itself. How about Advil? How about Motrin? How about nonsteroidal anti-inflammatories? Folks, the hospitals are filled up every week with people hemorrhaging from these drugs, kidney failure, gastrointestinal bleeding, increased risk of heart disease. Not a good solution. Tylenol can be helpful in spots, but
Tylenol. Oh my gosh, it doesn't work.
It doesn't. Well, all right. So there you go.
So what's your option then? You can't take Advil. Tylenol really is. Come on. You can't do any opioids.
Well,
what do?
You've got to go to the root of the problem. You've got to go to the systemic inflammation. Get your pen out. 3 tests that can help determine how much inflammation you have. Maybe 4. Percent body fat we talked about. CRP, high sensitivity C-reactive protein, is a marker for inflammation. IL-6, interleukin 6, marker for inflammation. TNF, tumor necrosis factor, marker for inflammation. We do this test routinely at Intellectual Medicine. You can ask it of your doctor if you're suffering these pain syndromes. It may help shed light on the issue. They're not perfect, but if those markers are elevated, you've got a problem, and you should address it before an issue comes. Getting ahead of the curve, staying young, staying healthy, that's what we live for every day at Intellectual Medicine. We've been there now, it's our 3rd year of doing this intensive form of advanced anti-aging therapy. And in a couple of weeks, we'll be going to meet our colleagues in Las Vegas for the World Conference on Anti-Aging Medicine. We'll be coming back from that with all sorts of exciting new information. But the most exciting thing is that we're coming to East Bay, folks, January 8th, with a new doctor, a new center with all the brilliant things we do at Intellectual Medicine. So for Shannon and I, stay young, wishing you 120 youthful years. I'm Dr. Petteruti. This is Intellectual Medicine. Have a great day.